My name is Daniel Goetzel. I am a program director with the National Science Foundation. I'm joined by a number of our team members from the National Science Foundation, the TIP Directorate, and the NSF Engines team. We'll be introducing some of them over the course of the call, but we also are working collaboratively on this effort. This has been kind of a while in the making, and we're excited to talk to you about our vision for what we are calling the NSF Engines Builder Platform. So I've been at the National Science Foundation for about a year and a half. Prior to that, I was working on a number of different innovation ecosystem building efforts in Baltimore, in Kentucky, and New York, doing a lot of this work on the ground. So I know that a lot of you are on the ground doing this work in your communities and across the country. So really appreciate you joining us here today. So for today, we're going to give an overview of the NSF Engines program. I know a lot of you know a lot about the program, so we're just going to keep it very brief. Then we are going to give you kind of an overview of the Builder Platform, its vision, talk a bit about the early focus areas, how we are going to evaluate proposals that come in, the deadlines, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. You are welcome to use the Q&A function at any point during this presentation to submit questions, and then we will flag those and answer them at the end of the presentation. So we'll try to get through as many as we can. We probably won't have the opportunity to get through every single one of them, though. So, as a lot of you know, the NSF Engines program is one of the signature initiatives of the new Technology Innovation and Partnerships Directorate. We are in the process of making Type 1 awards and Type 2 awards. So the Type 1 awards are the $1 million planning grants for really early stage ecosystems, and the Type 2 awards are these much larger $160 million awards over 10 years. And kind of the core thesis of this NSF Engines program is we need to build robust innovation ecosystems across the country. And we need to build them in areas of emerging technologies in a way that drives greater innovation, greater R&D, and greater economic development across our country. So this is not kind of a point solution, meeting an entrepreneur at a very specific point in their journey, but is actually focused on how do we build these ecosystems and working at the ecosystem level, connecting these stakeholders with the private capital, with the public dollars, with the corporate partners, with the economic development people they need in their communities and across the country to do this work. So we are really excited about this effort, but we recognize that putting dollars into these communities is not going to do it in and of itself. We really need to build a robust network around our entrepreneurs and our ecosystem builders across the country and build a support structure that sets them up for success. So before I get into what we are thinking about in terms of that vision for what we call the Builder Platform, I just want to explain what an engine is. So an engine is a regionally centered, multi-sector coalition of stakeholders across industry, academia, government, nonprofits, all working together in a specific region of the country on a topic of national importance. So this is different than a startup. This is kind of an ecosystem-based effort. It's an engine, and it sits at the center of a regional innovation ecosystem. So you have your NSF engine, and then it's surrounded by an ecosystem. And if you're building correctly and you're building well and building in a catalytic manner, they should both grow in tandem. So, the NSF engine is led by a CEO. So in a lot of ways, it might look like a corporation or a startup or some type of organization, but it really is an ecosystem-centric effort. And that's going to be kind of critically important throughout our conversation over the course today. So what we want to do is we want to drive this work across the nation. So we're going to be making, awards, I think we said for the Type 1s before the summer and the Type 2 awards before the end of the year. And we hope that this Builder Platform effort is going to sit alongside of it and really be that co-pilot to support our awardees going through this journey and also connecting them to the innovation ecosystem across the country. So, the goals of this initiative are to advance critical technologies, address societal challenges, promote economic growth, drive job creation, and cultivate regional talent across the country. So we're putting $160 million or $1 million into these efforts, but it's going to take much more than that capital to drive this work. So what does that mean? What does that mean for this Builder Platform vision? What are we trying to build? So this is a really unique effort, and we recognize that it's going to take some time and it's going to take some significant dollars. So we are saying that we're going to provide up to $9.5 million over a 3-year award period to one or more organizations to support this work. And this organization that will be created, this Builder Platform effort, will be responsible for supporting our approximately 50 Type 1 engines and are approximately 5 or more type 2 engines. So they will work with engines at both this type 1 stage and the engines that are slightly a bit more mature at these type 2 awardees. And as you might expect, what type 1 engines and type 2 engines need might be slightly different. There are obviously going to be some things that will benefit the entire portfolio, but there's also certain offerings or networks or talent efforts that might be unique to people at different stages of development. So, a bit more detail. We expect that this organization is going to work with the type 1 awardees for the entirety of their award period. And there's going to be kind of a really early focus on support structures, community, and network building for the type 1s. But there's not going to be a curriculum focus for the type 1s. It's not that we're not going to focus on curriculum support for the type 1 awardees, but we're actually going to have an outside organization or a network of outside organizations working on that. For the type 2 awardees, is a smaller portfolio, so we expect an even more involved effort. So that is going to be kind of curriculum, support, talent, communities, capital connections, whatever else you think is going to be needed. So rather than kind of honing in on each of these individual buckets, okay, is it support, is it talent, is it this or that? We probably want to kind of take a level up and just talk to you about the vision overall before we get into the nuts and bolts of what might be involved, because intentionally we structure this using an OTA and other transaction arrangement to give us that flexibility to be able to change course and to be able to continue to build on it over the course of this award period and be able to evolve as the needs of our awardees evolve. So this is intentionally a very flexible contract mechanism. So just to be clear, it is a contract. It is not a cooperative agreement. It is not a grant. So how do we define a builder platform? And I think this is important because I think a lot of people hear platform and jump to certain conclusions. So I want to kind of off the bat talk about our definition of platform. Platform is a human-centered, high-touch support network for NSF Engine awardees. So I think about it as people connecting people to build communities. The platform team is comprised of individuals who connect NSF Engine awardees with the talent, the knowledge, the resources, the communities they need to excel in a heavily curated manner. So basically, you have all of these engines, and they're going to have some needs that are very similar. They're going to have some needs that are very different. And the goal is to have this network of people in programs that help them however they need. It's kind of built around and centered around the needs of the awardees to connect them with all the different resources that will lead to their success. And some of those things we have ideas about what those might be, and some of those might evolve, and some of those might look different from some portions of the portfolio, from other portions of the portfolio. So we really want to have an organization that is led by people who are nimble in developing this effort. But as we've said multiple times, human-centered individuals doing this work, very different than kind of a technology platform. So from a tactical perspective, what that looks like is we want to make sure we can help our awardees connect into this national network of partners and funders. So maybe they need new talent or they want to work on different partnerships. Is there kind of a way that we can build these mesh networks to support them in a really high touch way? So that's kind of how do we connect them to the innovation ecosystem world. The second piece is how do we connect them in community within the cohort? There's going to be people working on similar topic areas. There's going to be people dealing with certain challenges. There's going to be people on leadership teams of these engines that have similar challenges around workforce development or science translation. Can we build really robust peer-to-peer networks and communities? So that's just kind of one piece of it. But we do think that there are value in driving connections within the cohort. And then last but not least, there are certain things that we think are going to be really valuable that need to be built specifically to support the awardees. And that might be curriculum, that could be support structures, that could be tools that are directly informed by the needs of the awardees. So kind of holistically, what we're thinking about is how do we connect the innovation ecosystem to our awardees? How do we connect our awardees to the innovation ecosystem? How do we connect them to each other? And then what are the things that they need that might not exist, but can be developed across the portfolio? And that can take a number of different shapes or forms. These are just 3 or 4 things that come to mind. So this is kind of a visualization of how we're thinking about it. So you have these awardees, these ecosystem builders, the CEOs and their leadership teams working with each other, getting to know each other, building community. And at the same time, you can see on the outside of this, you have capital providers, you have corporate partners, you have talent. And we want to basically bring all these networks closer into this universe. And we want to do it in a curated, intentional manner. So as opposed to be really ad hoc and just trying to figure out, is there a way to do this where there's the benefit of the scale? That we have this really powerful network that we're building. Can we create a center of gravity around it and make it really easy for these awardees to work with each other and learn from each other, but at the same time, make it really easy for the innovation community to connect with them? So that is going to take a real concierge effort to make that work well. So what does that look like? Essentially, this is a very simplistic metaphor, but we think about it in terms of like two front doors. There's the front door for awardees, our portfolio, and then there's the front door for the innovation community. Both of them want to get something out of this builder platform effort, and both of them have unique needs. But we want to build an organization and an effort that suits both those needs and is responsive to the needs of both the awardees and to the broader innovation community that wants to work with our awardees. So for the awardees, what does that might look like? It could be programming, it could be curriculum, it could be training, it could be these peer-to-peer communities that we talked about. It'll also be access to really hard to reach networks. It's hard to go out and build a corporate pilot. It's hard to find talent and capital. Is there a way that we can basically say, we have this center of gravity, and if you are interested in working in an engine, we're going to figure out a way to connect you to these awardees. Or if you are a philanthropic investor in this area and you're really passionate about climate-based technologies, can we create a way for you to work with our portfolio of awardees? And not just kind of, oh, it'd be nice if you met each other, but can we do this in a really intentional manner? That's kind of the end goal of how we'd like to build this. And then on the flip side, you have the innovation community. We're putting hundreds of millions of dollars into these projects across the country. We're helping to de-risk these technologies. We're helping to de-risk these emerging areas. And a lot of times when you talk to the innovation community, they say, well, it's really hard. We don't know those geographies, those markets. We're saying we're going to help you find these opportunities in these markets. We're going to help you find the technologies, the startup, the talent. And we're also going to introduce you to kind of a curated network of innovators. So what we want to do is basically say, how do we connect these two universes? How do we bring them together and do it in a way that's really valuable to both sides of the universe, and do it in a way where it's human-centered and it's humans connecting to each other? So at this point in time, I know this is still very vague, so we thought we would bring Korie and Jemin up, two of our additional team members, and we're going to kind of like do a mini role play exercise. And what I will say as we do this is meant to be exclusively an illustrative example. These are not to say these are the exact activities that will take place or that we encourage you to take place. It's just more to kind of make it clearer what this could look like. So if we could put a spotlight on Korie and Jemin from our team, if there is any discrepancies between what you hear in this role-playing episode and what you see in the solicitation offering, please refer to the solicitation offering. So fantastic. Do we have Korie and Jemin spotlighted? Okay, great. So Korie, do you want to introduce yourself first? She's going to be playing the role of a CEO of one of our NSF Engine awardees.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm a Korie. I'm a AAAS fellow helping out. And Daniel, did you want me to go straight into it?
Yeah, go right into it. Imagine you're the CEO of one of our NSF Engine awardees.
All right. Hello, I'm Korie. I'm the CEO for NSF Engine, and I'm really struggling to find the executive talent that we need to lead our engine. We have some great candidates living in the region that we are considering leading our workforce development vertical, but I really need help finding a COO and a chief scientific officer. So who has a deep background in translating technologies from lab to market? So also my team is coming from several different sectors, and we are all speaking what feels like different languages in our early team meetings. Can you help us out?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to play the role of the hypothetical builder platform team. So Korie, it sounds like you're facing two different challenges here. One is you're trying to find some great senior leadership to come on board. And the other is like you have people from a lot of different sectors working on a lot of different things on your team, and they're not necessarily all speaking the same language. And you're trying to move, really quickly to build some things. And you're trying to figure out how to do it. So, our builder platform team is constantly thinking about how we can help you source talent. We have access to relationships across the country. We're thinking about how we can help you find full-time senior roles. We can help you find mentors. We can help you find the talent that you need. So, we've been receiving resumes from people across the country. If you also have a blurb, we can put it out to our mentor network and to our other networks, and we can even think about really intentional ways that we can support that effort. And once you find that talent, we can also help you think about the best ways to onboard that talent. For example, this month we are thinking about how we help our CEOs. And we're thinking about creating a peer-to-peer network for all the CEOs across the country, because what you're talking about is you're not the only person in the country who's dealing with this issue. We have people all across the country. We're also thinking about building out coaching networks for your leadership team so that they have the support that they need throughout this process. And then to your last point, some of the things that we're thinking about in terms of upcoming programming, curriculum around team science and team building and kind of building this kind of integrated engine, we hope it will be helpful. So some of these things will be kind of one-off opportunities. Others are going to be things that are available to the full portfolio. But I hope this is something that you find valuable. And these are the types of things that we want to provide to you and to your team.
Thank you, Daniel.
All right, next up, we have Jemin. Jemin, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us what you're working on and what your challenge is?
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining the webinar. I am Jemin George. I'm a program director within the TIP Directorate. So I'll jump right into my role. Hello, I am Jemin. I lead a venture capital firm that makes equity investment in climate technologies. I also have a family foundation and work with several other philanthropies on developing climate tech workforce. How can I get involved, and what team should I be focusing in on?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Jemin. So, it sounds like you have kind of an investment side of your effort, and you also have something that might be a bit more philanthropic minded or talent and workforce development focused. So we'll talk about both of those. First of all, I just want to kind of say our focus is at the ecosystem builder level. It's at the Korie level of this effort. She's our CEO. So we also are going to have amazing startups coming out from across the country. But the focus of my builder platform team is really focused on those ecosystem builders. But with that in mind, I'm happy to talk to our portfolio of engines and say, how many of them have climate-based technologies emerging? Can we create a type of opportunity for you to get introduced to some of these, interesting startups that are emerging out of individual engines across the country? But if you're simply saying to us, you just want to see the most exciting companies, we'll have like one level of support. It might be some newsletters, it might be an opportunity to search the portfolio. But if you're interested in getting more involved in a more high touch way, maybe that's, helping provide entrepreneurs in residence from your fund, or maybe it's auto investing in a subset of companies that will come out of engines each year. We can create an even more curated opportunity for you. So we'll have to kind of talk more. If you're just kind of interested in passively seeing what's coming out of the portfolio, there might be one way for us to work with us. If it's something more involved, I think we're working on some other opportunities as well for a number of climate investors who are interested in seeing things coming in from across the portfolio. And then on the talent piece, obviously, this is something we're thinking a lot about. We are thinking about, developing fellowship initiatives, perhaps, that will sit on top of the NSF engines. Perhaps there'll be a climate entrepreneurial fellowship initiative where we could work with different teams within the cohort, and we could create a cohort that sits across all of the engines locations that are focused on climate. So if you're interested in doing that, we have some other philanthropies and corporates that are interested in kind of developing this model that would sit on top of the builder platform, and we can help facilitate those introductions. Does that sound like the types of things you could potentially be interested in?
Yes, that sounds perfect. Thank you, Daniel.
All right. So I appreciate Jemin and Korie for playing those roles. I just want to be really clear. These were just illustrative examples. This was not, do not come back to us and write these exact same things back into it. It was just to get you thinking about how we're thinking about the role of the builder platform and the team behind it. This is individuals thinking really intentionally about the portfolio and the needs of the innovation community and trying to develop offerings that will provide value across the board, and to do it in a way where hard to reach networks are easier to reach. So I'm gonna keep going, but appreciate continued questions as we go through this. So as you know, we did some market intelligence at the end of last year and early this year, and we learned a couple of things in the process, and we're sharing some of those learnings now because I think it's important, because it helped inform what we ended up putting out. One, we were very surprised at how much interest there was across the board. Venture funds, consulting firms, universities, government contractors, incubators and accelerators all expressed interest, which is great because we think there is going to take a real mix of stakeholders from across the universe to lead this work well. There was some market confusion. Some people thought we were looking for a technology platform specifically and exclusively. We understand that based on the word platform, but we're hoping with the language that we put out, we help clarify some of the things that we're looking for in this effort. A lot of people wanted us to use a really flexible contract mechanism to allow them to bring in the types of subawardees and subcontracts that they need. That's one of the reasons we went with this OTA model, because we recognize the team structure could evolve over time, and you're going to need the flexibility to bring in the right talent and the right team at the right point in time. And then the last thing we saw was a lot of people said, I'm really, really good at one specific thing, or I'm really, really focused on one place in the country. I'm just going to do that. Can you outsource that work to me? And the answer is, we're thinking about this builder platform as something that's going to work across the entire portfolio. There might be opportunities for building on top of it, as we talked about, or there might be opportunities to serve in subcontractor roles. But if you are hyper specialized in one area, you probably are not as well set up to be the lead organization for a builder platform effort, but there's definitely going to be opportunities and roles for you to get involved. So who is eligible? That kind of takes us to this next question. All organization types are eligible. You are limited to one application per lead organization, though. You can't put in multiple applications. If you are applying to be a subcontractor, you can be on multiple applications, but as a lead organization, you're limited to one application. Our expectation is this lead organization that will be leading this builder platform effort has the expertise and experience to lead multiple work streams. It should not be kind of a holding company, but they actually should be able to lead quite a bit of the work that we think is critical to developing this builder platform effort. Partnerships are encouraged. We recognize this is a big task. We recognize that it's going to take a number of organizations perhaps teaming up to build the strongest application. We're thinking kind of intentionally about how we can help you understand who is in this universe and potentially, help people raise their hand who are looking for partners. We're trying to figure out what we can do within the rules that are allowed, but that's something that we're thinking a lot about. And then last but not least, we say that we expect within the first year for the organization to be able to receive philanthropic funds and prove charitable purpose to external funders within the first year. So that can be either the lead organization or a member of the consortium or the team, but you have to be able to potentially absorb outside capital as a part of this effort, because we think there is a real growth opportunity and we want organizations that are set up to do that. So, people might say, well, anyone can receive money. I'm happy to take money from anyone. But the second part here is prove charitable purpose. Be in a position where outside foundations and others will be comfortable giving funds to some member of the consortium. So that's something that we say within the first year, we'd like for you to be able to prove that. So what makes the builder platform different? I think some of you on this call might have led other things at NSF or other things within the federal government, and you're saying, okay, this sounds a lot like this, or it sounds a lot like that. And there probably are aspects that are similar to other things you've seen within government. I think a couple of key differences. We're ecosystem centric. We are focused on supporting the ecosystem builders who are leading NSF engines. We will also support the emerging startups, but that is not the direct focus. This is not specifically focused on supporting individual startups. That is going to be kind of an ancillary impact. We think there's going to be opportunities. We're going to see amazing deal flow coming out of these engines. But the main focus is supporting our ecosystem builders who are leading this. We want you to play an active connecting and sourcing role. So we want you to help them connect with talent. If you can help them find full-time talent, mentors, entrepreneurs, and residents that could sit across multiple of our awardees, interns, fellows, there are a lot of different ways to think about this, but we want you to play an active role in helping to drive these talent connections. And also just connections in general. This is different than just saying, you can go find an organization, submit your information, but actually actively playing a role in managing in these connections is important. We think about this as kind of a scalable platform, not a technology platform, but a platform for corporations, philanthropists, and VCs who want to engage with the engines and want to engage with TIP. This is an opportunity to find really exciting projects. This is an opportunity to work across the portfolio, work with multiple teams at once. And we hope that this team, this role, is going to be central to building those relationships. So as we mentioned before, there could be opportunities in addition to our dollars to have, additional co-investment and co-involvement and people building on top of it. And that's our goal. We want this to be kind of an organic effort. And then last but not least, you have to be comfortable supporting teams at multiple stages of ecosystem development. So you'll have some regions in the country that are much earlier on. You'll have some other regions that are slightly more mature. And we want people who are comfortable meeting teams at different stages of development. That might be different than other things you've seen from NSF in the past. It's different than meeting an individual startup or a researcher at a specific point in their development where they're trying to make a customer discovery decision or a go or no go decision on a startup. You are meeting ecosystem builders and members of those ecosystems who are at various stages of development. So I think that differentiates us from other things that you might have seen from SBIR, I-Core, other programs like that within the ecosystem. So it's all about connecting people with people. Say this over and over again. Some of this will be one-on-one interactions. Some of this will be facilitating peer-to-peer relationships. Others will be group settings. So you have to be comfortable meeting and working with teams at different stages of development and with different lived experiences. So we really want to drive interpersonal connections between our awardees, both within the portfolio and with all the people who are critical to this, from the use-inspired research, the venture, the workforce development, the economic development world. And this can take on a number of shapes or forms, events, activities. But I'm going to be really clear about this. This is directly from the solicitation offering. We really want you to avoid building custom tools or technologies where commonly used tools are available. If there's something that can be built or that already exists in the marketplace that can be repurposed for this, that is our ideal, as opposed to building custom technologies for this effort. So building on that, a couple things, and this might lead to some people hopping off the call, but I figure it's always useful to be proactive in kind of sharing this information. We can imagine that this can look like a lot of different things, that this industry, this effort could take a number of shapes or forms. We kind of think we're building kind of a new space, around this, but we also recognize there's some things that people might be doing in adjacent spaces that may or may not be relevant. So here are some things that this is not. The Builder platform is not a technology-first platform, an innovation or economic development analysis tool, a standalone website that consolidates best practices, a set of technologies or tools that just scrape databases for promising technologies, an opportunity to preview your new technology or tool for NSF. This isn't, here's my great SBIR company, take a look. A holding company that outsources all the work to sub-awardees or subcontractors. As we said earlier on, we expect the lead organization to meaningfully lead multiple work streams. We'll talk about those work streams in a moment, but that is very different than just saying we're very good at managing government contracts. For organizations that are only interested in supporting awardees in a single geography or topic area, we really want people who have a kind of a breadth of experience and the ability to speak multiple languages and work with different types of teams, whether those are for-profits, nonprofits, universities, or for applicants who have especially specialized expertise and are not interested in going beyond that specialized area. If you want to be involved, there's going to be opportunities to join a team, or there are also, once we have a builder platform, an opportunity to perhaps build on top of those offerings. What we hope this is, though, on a positive note, is a new model for support and community building. We've had a lot of conversations with the incubator, accelerator, venture capital world. We've also spoken with about 20 teams that have done government technical assistance everywhere from DARPA to Commerce to SBIR and SBA programs. And we think there's a lot of really promising things that are going on in the market. We think this is slightly different, but we want to build on that. We really want to connect our ecosystem builders with the capital, the partners, the talent, the data, and the tools that they need. And what that means at its core is we need to do more than just connecting people with shared backgrounds and lived experiences with other people who have similar backgrounds and lived experiences. The goal of the Builder platform is to create more opportunity, to bring people into the fold who have historically left been behind in these types of efforts. So that's really intentional throughout this effort. All right, one moment, I'm just gonna have a sip of water because I've been talking for a minute here. So we talk about 4 key priority areas. We think there might be other priority areas that emerge over time, but these are some of the things that we think are going to be critically important in the early days for building this effort. One is nurturing talent. You need to have great people and you need to have them understanding what is needed to build a great ecosystem. So sourcing, training, supporting talent is going to be critical. When we think about that, everything from the C-suite to helping them bring in fellows and bringing in interns and building kind of these ecosystems around it. Number 2 is partnerships. We probably have a lot of awardees who are very good at building partnerships with 1 or 2 sectors, but probably have not done a good job or have been asked to build these partnerships in a lot of other universes. We want to help them understand what needs to be done, and then also actively help connect them to these partners that might be hard to reach. Are there ways to do this at scale? Are there ways to do this around topic areas? These are things that we're thinking really intentionally about. We're putting $160 million per awardee into these regions, but we recognize the scale of the work that needs to be done is much beyond that. So how can we help our awardees understand the different business models that are possible to create sustainable models for their engines? And how can we also help connect them to the capital that they need? So that is more than just kind of panels with people saying, here's how you go and raise capital. We, in an ideal world and at end state, will have actual capital structures that can lead to these types of partnerships. And then last but not least, we want to make sure that DEIA, diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility strategies are built into all of our activities, that there are on-ramps, and that our awardees are thinking about this intentionally from how they develop their R&D strategies, how they build their governance models, how they think about community input. So this is kind of the last thing that we really want the Builder Platform team to focus on. So I've touched on some of these before. There's more detail on this in what we put out, but we think about training the senior leadership team, creating mentor networks for them, sourcing and connecting talent for roles within engines, and thinking about it across our entire portfolio of awardees, and building networks within and across NSF Engine awardees for the key members of their management team. So that might be connecting them with other people who are in similar roles, could be connecting them with mentors, entrepreneurs and residents, coaches. There's a lot of different models, and we've intentionally left this flexible so that you can tell us what you think is the best approach to how to build this work. Partnerships. So part of this is helping them understand how you build mutually beneficial partnerships, things that are not just on paper, but things that actually move these communities. And doing this with a number of different types of organizations that might be different than your own. It's one thing to build a partnership with another university as a university. It's another thing to try to build partnerships with VC funds and corporates. Some of them might have that muscle. Others might need to develop that. And what I say is some of this might be helping individual teams do this, but in an ideal world, we would like to have portfolio level partnerships as well that benefit all of our awardees. So that can take a number of different shapes and forms. And we'd love for you all to think about this. Sustainability, part of that is building really nimble organizations with diversified revenue streams and strong governance models. Another piece of that is being able to absorb outside capital, being able to leverage NSF funds to bring in additional state, federal, philanthropic, and co-investment. And we are open to creative models for co-investment as well. So we welcome ideas on that front. And then last but not least, we think about DEIA in kind of two buckets. One, we want to understand your culture of DEIA at your organization. And then we also want to understand how you're going to interweave DEIA into the very fabric of each of these engines across their foundational work. How are you going to help them think about it from a use-inspired research perspective, a partnership perspective? And then how are you going to build a platform that creates on-ramps for people who historically have not been able to participate in these efforts? So, one is helping these communities think about their DEIA strategies. Two is building an offering that has on-ramps for communities that perhaps have been left behind. And then three is we actually want to know about your own culture of DEIA within your organization. So these should kind of be separated out in what you ultimately submit. And some of these things are going to require curriculum and training. As we said, the type 1 awardees are going to already have their curriculum in place, but we do expect for the type 2 awardees that you're going to be working on repurposing some of the type 1 curriculum, developing new curriculum. We ballpark that as about 2.5 hours of curriculum or program a month. That can take on a number of forms. We say we're going to reevaluate that after the first year. But we do think that part of this is actually teaching. It is one piece of it. It is not the whole thing, but creating curriculum and programming will be important. So the evaluation process. Applications are due on June 12th, 5 p.m. Eastern time. You will email them to Ozgi and Ben. Their email addresses are going to be included. Then a subset of teams are going to be invited to oral presentations. These are going to be virtual oral presentations. They're going to take place sometime between July 20th and August 3rd. Coming out of that, we're going to use kind of this holistic process to make a decision on the one or more organizations that we will work with. We do not have kind of a set number of teams yet that are going to be invited to oral presentations, but we imagine it's going to be a subset of the teams that submit full applications. And then our goal is to have the awardees, the contracts negotiated and start working with the awardees in the fall. Depending on how long each of these steps take before, we don't know if that'll be early fall, mid fall, or late fall. Our goal is to move as quickly as possible because we recognize the value that this builder platform effort will bring to the overall NSF Engines program. So when we have your proposals, you'll see there's kind of two evaluation steps in the process. There's the evaluation step around the written proposal, and then there's the evaluation step around the oral presentation. So with the written proposal, we're looking at two things: organizational experience and capacity. What have you done already in this space? And that does not mean necessarily what you have done only with the federal government, but with stakeholders who look like ours, with the types of organizations that we are focused on supporting. So there's a number of different sub-bullet points here. I'm not going to go into them in great detail, but I'm putting this one first because, we are, during the written proposals, we are weighting the organizational experience and capacity as an important factor. And then the other thing that we're going to be looking at is how well do you understand the challenge? Do you get what we're trying to do? Do you have a plan that is going to meaningfully address all the topic areas that we laid out? And then does the budget back that up? Does it seem reasonable? So there's kind of two pieces. Do you have the right experience? And do you understand what we're trying to do? Because some people might have the right experience, but are not interested in trying to build what we're trying to build. And that's important to understand through this process. So and then we'll move on to the oral presentation stage. And these will be held virtually via Zoom. They'll be no longer than 90 minutes. There'll be a very short pitch followed by multiple opportunities for Q&A and discussion. And at this phase, we're really trying to understand, do you understand the evolving challenges? Are you able to put forward a nimble vision for creatively tackling this? So what is your vision? What is your approach to doing this? And we recognize you're not going to know exactly what that looks like in year 3, but we do want to understand what that looks like in the short term and the intermediate term. And do we think what you're proposing in these activities are going to be appropriate and impactful? And then, at the end of the day, we want to understand that this is an integrated approach, that these are not just kind of one-offs working separately on their own island, but you have built kind of an integrated team that can deliver this in a way where it seems like a single entry point and a single team working with our awardees. Question I'm sure we're going to get during Q&A, who is eligible? So we have no eligibility limitations. If you do have COIs or think that you might have COIs or develop COIs, we ask for you to explain those in your application. This is especially relevant if you're a type 1 or type 2 applicant or awardee or sub-awardee. You really need to understand and explain how you are going to create a firewall if there are other revenue streams that you're receiving from the NSF Engine program, and how you're going to be able to support the team that you're working with now and with the entire portfolio, because this is really an organization that needs to work nimbly across the entire portfolio and do it in a way that is unbiased. So we'll address what you put forward in your COI plans when you submit, but we do not have kind of any limitations saying if you are this or that, you can't apply. All right, deadlines. So the application document, we're going to have another webinar next week where we go into these in much more detail, but I'm just going to skim through it right now. It's a 15-page proposal. It's up to 15 pages. If you don't think you need 15 pages, you can use less than 15 pages. We expect you to put together a budget. We expect you to put together a 5-year financial model. So what does that look like in terms of additional capital coming in other sources and other partnership approaches? So this is actually longer than the 3-year award period, but we want to understand your long-term thinking. Project deliverables, we have a 3-page limit. Milestone payment schedule, there is no payment page limit on that. We are focused on kind of your milestones for the first year. We recognize it's going to be harder to gauge those for future years. So there's a real emphasis on kind of year 1 there. We also need your data management and privacy plan, since you're going to be getting access both from the awardees and perhaps from NSF to proprietary information. So we need to understand how you're going to handle that. And then last but not least, your letters of commitment. So 1 page per subcontractor. It says no page limit also, so that doesn't make a lot of sense. So maybe there's no total page limit on how many of those you can submit. We'll clarify that. But we're saying 1 page per subcontractor. So the deadline is June 12th at 5 p.m. Eastern. We recognize this is a quick turnaround, and it's because we need to start working with this organization quickly so we get the most value for our awardees. So you'll submit your applications to Ozzy and Ben. Their email addresses are here. We'll have more information in the technical webinar about how you put that packet together. You want to learn more? We are going to have a technical webinar on May 16th. We are also exploring having breakout rooms for teams or individuals to meet each other. After that, they will not be things that we really manage and run, but more of an opportunity for you to go and talk to each other if you think there's opportunities to team. We're also going to do office hours. These are not going to be one-on-one office hours, but like one-to-many office hours. So you'll come in, there'll be 20, 30 people in a room, and you'll have an opportunity to ask questions, have a bit of back and forth with our team, and hear other people's questions as well. These will be space limited. So please do not sign up for more than one. If you sign up for more than one, you are making it impossible for other people to participate in this process, or more difficult. So please only choose one slot. So with that, I am going to pause, and we're going to open it up for Q&A. But right before I bring Korie on to join for Q&A, I just want to say, one thing, kind of taking this back up to the 30,000 foot level. What we're trying to do is build a new model for how you support your portfolio of awardees. We think capital is important, but we think there are a lot of other things that we can bring to the table, both as the federal government and as kind of a team surrounding our team within the federal government. So what we need to do is build those networks and create that center of gravity and create that momentum for our awardees so they are set up for success and they are able to do things that they would not be able to do if they went at it alone. And that is kind of at its core the vision for this effort and why we're standing this up and why we're building this in a very different way than traditional technical assistance or curriculum or webinars, but really thinking, what are the things our portfolio of awardees need and how do we help them get it? How do we help them connect to the resources they need? Not just how do we teach them how to do that, but can we take it a step further and actually help them connect? So we're really excited about this vision. We know it's a big vision. We know we're asking you to do a lot, but we're going to be in on this together with you. And regardless of what you decide after hearing us today about putting in an application, we will need everyone in this ecosystem working together to build what we want to do. So I hope you'll stay involved along this journey. And with that, we will open it up for Q&A. So come on up, Korie.
Great. Thank you all again for your questions. Every question has been recorded or is going to be recorded. And so we will try to address as many as we can before the time period is up. So I will start more with like general information. We were asked this a couple times. Will this be recording or slide deck be available or sent out afterwards?
The recording will be made available online on our YouTube channel within the next couple of days.
Awesome. Will we know the names of the organizations attending this webinar?
So if you opted in when you signed up, we will share that information with everyone who opted in. So that is kind of how we incentivize people to opt in to sharing their information with others. But if you didn't opt in, we won't be able to share contact information.
Another question, if somebody wants to connect or contact the team, how should they contact the team?
If you have questions, you could submit them to Ben and Ozzy. You can also come to our upcoming office hours to ask those questions. Those are the best routes. We're also going to publish an FAQ in the coming weeks where we'll hopefully address some of those questions that are coming in. But if you have kind of specific questions, probably the best route right now is to email Ben and Ozzy, and they'll put those all together and we'll either answer them individually or you'll see those answers in forthcoming FAQs, or if we can't answer them, we'll tell you we can't answer that question.
Awesome. So now I'll move into more eligibility and awardee responsibility type questions. First one, if you are a sub-awardee on an NSF grant, can you also apply to this opportunity?
As I mentioned, there are no limitations on who can apply, but you are going to have to explain any potential financial COIs or other COIs that you might have. So having received funding from NSF in the past does not in and of itself create a COI, but if you think you have any current COIs or there might be future COIs that present themselves, you'll need to identify those and we'll evaluate them throughout this process. And I see some people trying to raise their hand. It's actually better to just submit the question through the Q&A as opposed to using the raise the hand function.
Thank you for that clarification. Do you consider the main function of this platform to be a marketplace to connect various stakeholders of engines?
I view that as one piece of the holistic effort here. This is not just kind of putting people into a marketplace and letting them find each other. We've talked a lot about curated introduction, support, relationships. I would not think about this through the lens of a technology platform or marketplace, but I think creating an opportunity for people to find each other and for them to find talent and for them to find partners and to find capital is a central component of this effort.
Thank you. Can organizations that have applied for NSF engines, either type 1 or type 2, submit proposals for the platform as well?
Yes, they can. What I would say, though, is if you are going for a type 1 or a type 2 as a lead organization, you should think really intentionally about if you are able to also support all the other awardees within your portfolio. Are you set up to do that? I think it's slightly different if you're a subcontractor or a sub-awardee, but if you're kind of a lead organization, the goal is to support the entire portfolio. So if you are specifically saying, I am an engine and I need to develop my own ecosystem, you need to be able to also make the case about why can you also support 50, 60 plus other ecosystems across the country while you are building your own effort. So we are open to any and all applications, but you really do need to make the case for how you are going to be able to work across the entire portfolio and why you have the unique expertise to provide all the resources that our awardees are going to need and not be able to just provide those resources for your own community or your own place where you work.
Okay, thanks. This, I think, gives some people some perspective. What types of organizations in the innovation community have expressed interest or committed to supporting the Engines program?
We've been hearing from a lot of different types of organizations. I've been talking to venture funds. I've been talking to philanthropies that want to commit dollars to this, that want to co-create with us, that want to help us do different things. We've been talking to corporates that are interested in specific technology areas. We've been talking to other federal agencies that are working on similar initiatives. So I think the opportunities here are endless. It's really going to take kind of some intentional decision-making early on to decide which ones to pursue and which ones are worth building. So I don't think there's any lack of interest. It's going to be thinking through what opportunities make the most sense.
Thank you. Another question. Someone was asking for a point of clarification, that a lead is supposed to have regionally specific personal connections, but also have a national focus. Sounds like it would only connect engines to national companies that may not have a footprint in a specific geography.
I'm not sure I fully understand. What I would say is we'd expect the builder platform to be able to bring in national networks. Their networks shouldn't just be focused on an individual geography or topic area. With that being said, we can envision a situation where they would build, networks on top of the builder platform that are centered around a specific place or a topic area. So they might bring together a group of funders from the Midwest, or they might bring together a group of corporates that are focused on, the bioeconomy. And these would be things that sit on top of it, would be kind of benefits to a subset of the community. But what we want is an organization that is capable of working across multiple different types of organizations. They understand the use-inspired research, but also are capable of speaking the language of economic developers and industry and others. So I think that is what we're trying to get at. So hopefully that clarifies things.
Speaking of, someone has already had a very successful climate-based ecosystem and are seeking funding to continue their work. They only do climate tech companies. Do they qualify? And if they only do climate, should they partner with others?
I would highly recommend that they partner with others because there are only going to be a subset of our teams that have a focus on climate, and this organization is going to need to be able to work across the entire portfolio. So replace climate with any other word and we could do this all over again. So I don't want this to be kind of specific to climate as a topic area. But if you do have specialized expertise, we really need to think intentionally about how you can support the entire portfolio or make the case for how you're going to expand your expertise to be able to support the portfolio.
Awesome. So now move into funding, and this is particular to our type 1 and type 2 awards first, because they're very interested in understanding what that looks like. So some people want to know, when will awards be announced? Have some of the application periods closed? And are there a list of some NSF engine awardees?
We do not have a list of awardees yet because we have not publicly announced our type 1 or our type 2 awardees. If you want to get a sense of the types of teams that submitted, you could go to our NSF Engines website and look at Find Potential Engines. That has all the concept outlines that we received across the country. We have said that we're going to make type 1 award decisions and announcements before the summer, and we intend to make the type 2 award decisions before the end of the year. So stay tuned because that information will be coming, in the coming months. So if you want to get a sense of what the portfolio could look like, though, I would highly recommend looking at our concept outlines using the Airtable and the Tableau that we have on our website, because that will give you kind of an illustration of the types of proposals and people who are raising their hand as interested in this program.
Thank you for that clarification. Another question is, how many platform awards do you expect to give?
1 or more. Intentionally a bit vague, but I mean, what I'll say is, we expect an organization to be the backbone of this effort and to be able to bring in additional pieces of the puzzle around it. So you saw our graphic talking about creating clean entry points for these communities, making it really easy for them to get involved. So we're going to see what the pool looks like, but we've said 1 or more.
How did you determine funding award size / the award period?
Yeah, it's a good question. So a lot of it was, we learned a lot in the market intelligence. One of the questions we asked people was, how much do you think it would cost to do this? We also benchmarked across industry and across other government initiatives to understand what these things would look like. Some of our team members have actually led efforts like this prior to coming to NSF, so they had a wealth of information. And we structured it with as an up to 3-year award period because we wanted to have flexibility to be able to change course over this period. So this is, an OTA. We are only asking for milestones for the first year of the award period. And we are saying we'll put new task orders onto it over time as things evolve. So at the end of this 3-year period, we have also maintained quite a bit of flexibility to decide what direction we would go after that 3-year period. But this is a new effort. We're trying to build a new space. We didn't want to make this the full 10 years or 12 years until we had a much better understanding of what the market looks like and what our needs are. And if we like this structure that we're putting forward right now.
Speaking of payments, are payments under this contract milestone-based or reimbursement-based?
Ben, are you on the line? Do you want to answer that question?
Yeah, we were envisioning a milestone-based payment schedule.
Thank you, Ben. Moving into another question, you mentioned the importance of securing charitable funds. If the Builder platform is sustained as a for-profit entity, is funding via charities still required?
We would like some part of the organization to be able to receive philanthropic funds. So it doesn't necessarily need to be the lead organization, but some part of the Builder platform team needs to have the capability to receive funds, because we think that is going to be a real source of opportunity throughout this process. And we wouldn't want a situation where there are additional partners who wanted to get involved and wanted to bring their capital to the table, but were unable to do so. So that does not mean that has to be the lead organization. If the lead organization is structured as a for-profit, that is completely possible, but we do think having the ability to receive philanthropic capital and to prove charitable purpose as a part of your organization is going to be important to achieve kind of the full vision and the full capital potential of this effort, especially since some of these dollars might be flowing through the organization to different awardee communities across the country.
Thank you, Daniel. How are subs budgeted in the proposal?
I think we're going to go into greater detail on that during the technical webinar. I think there's some instructions about how to handle that in the budget section of the proposal, but we'll go into greater detail on that in the technical webinar next week.
Great. What is your expectation of the number of personnel for the Builder platform?
It's a good question. I don't think we have a limit on the number of personnel who can be involved in the application. I think we have a limit in the number of people who can attend an oral presentation if you make it to that stage. But what I would say is, these are the people who are actually going to do the work. Like the people who you're going to either be helping to lead this effort or sub-lead this effort or taking on a specific work stream. I think it's very, very hard if you think about this as kind of a loose confederation of states and there's just hundreds of organizations sitting under it. I mean, we need to know who is actually going to lead the work and who is going to do it. So there isn't a kind of a limit on the team size, but I think there probably are some risks in going far too large or too small, because the awardees and the innovation community need to know who they're working with on this effort.
All right. Now we'll move on into more of the focus areas. Some of this being regional focus, but also some of the 4 primary areas that we talked about. The first one is, what are the current priority regions of focus for the NSF engines and therefore presumably for the Builder platforms?
So we're topic area agnostic for the regional innovation engines. We say they need to be areas of emerging national competitiveness. I think some of these areas have been laid out in the CHIPS Act and what OSDP has put out about their upcoming priorities, but we are topic area agnostic in the call for proposals. What I would say is from a geographic lens, we say we have an intentional focus on regions that have not fully participated in the tech boom. So, when you look at the concept outlines and you look at our submissions, you'll see a wide mix of communities, urban, rural, across the country that are trying to build their future innovation economies. These are not necessarily the people who are already the most successful innovation ecosystems in the world, the ones who are already the top 1%. You'll see kind of a number of different ecosystems at different stages of development.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Another question, it's twofold, so I'll try to be clear. What is the critical issue NSF wants to solve? Most companies, R&D, almost all university tech transfer organizations are unsuccessful. So what is the specific point of failure NSF has identified that is addressed will create a paradigm shift in innovative performance?
I think this question has taken a narrower lens than the way we're thinking about this. You're thinking there is great research. Why is it not getting out of the labs? And that's one piece of this. It's not the whole effort here. What we're thinking is the places that are most successful in the world have built robust ecosystems that build on each other, that lead to new exits and new companies coming on board and new researchers, and they kind of have this virtual flywheel. What we're trying to figure out is how do you help these regions create these flywheels, perhaps even when they don't have the relationships that some of these early winners had. They might not have the same people within the ecosystems. They might not have the same access to capital in the ecosystem. So how do we create these opportunities and these networks in a way that will supercharge their efforts and speed up the path for them to build these world-class ecosystems? So what you're asking is, how do you get more things out of the lab? And that's one piece of it. But what I'm saying is, how do you build more equitable economic development ecosystems and innovation ecosystems across the country, which is a much broader question than just, why have things not worked in the past from a university tech transfer perspective.
Thank you for that clarification. I'm going to combine 2 questions, which is centered around DEI. How will your selection process ensure that the lead organization fully understands and operates with DEI values at its core? as opposed to it being like a sidecar and not at the forefront as in the solicitation?
Yeah, so we have a couple of evaluation criteria that address this head on. One is a retrospective one, talking about experience and how they have approached this in the past. We also we want to kind of see a track record of how you're thinking about this and your governance models to approach this. And then we also kind of touch on this at multiple points in our vision piece when we're asking teams to put forward their vision. So I think there is always a risk that people say, okay, we're going to do all these other things, and then we'll bring on some other group to think about this, and we don't have to think about it. And we have tried to correct against that with a number of different ways that we structure this and a number of different ways we've written our evaluation criteria. And this was kind of a very intentional effort to make sure we capture that in the process.
Great. Moving on to more operations and delivery models. How does IP intellectual property work at the intersection between academia, industry, and VCs play into fundraising down the road?
Yeah, it's a good question. So one, all the type 2 engines within the first 6 months need to submit an IP plan. This could potentially be a place where the Builder Platform team is helpful in helping to come up with some best practices of what these partnership models could look like, helping to put forward some approaches, potentially even getting involved in structuring some of these efforts. But you're right. I mean, I've done this work in the past. You need a strong IP framework in order to get cross-sector partners, whether that's VCs or corporates, to come to the table. So when we think about the partnerships work stream, I think that could potentially be some of the activities that fall under that.
Great. Another one is, how will NSF facilitate introductions to corporates or others who want to explore new/creative models?
How will NSF? I mean, they'll run it through the Builder Platform. they'll basically say, hey, we got approached by this corporation. They're really interested in working with NSF Engine awardees X, Y, and Z. Let's bring in the Builder Platform and help make an introduction and see if it makes sense and see if we can structure something that works. I mean, we get incoming all the time. And right now, we don't always have the ability to make the right types of introductions or to manage those relationships, because NSF is largely structured as an organization that makes grant awards to research institutions. And we're trying to build all these wraparounds around it. And, you know, this starts with the Builder Platform, this starts with the NSF engines, but, you know, there's growth opportunities to think about how this supports, you know, all the TIP portfolio efforts or all of the things coming out of NSF, because we constantly are getting these opportunities to connect with different stakeholders. Like, that is something that happens all the time. And that is a unique place to be in the ecosystem. And we need to figure out how we democratize that access so that it benefits our portfolio of awardees. And that is one of the reasons we're creating this Builder Platform.
Is there an existing platform that served as an inspiration for the solicitation? And are there specific technologies that are useful to elevate human centricity?
I'm not sure I fully understand the question, but it sounds a bit like they're talking about a technology platform, which I kind of want to clarify. You know, this is a human connecting humans platform. So I wouldn't say, you know, here is, you know, X piece of software that has done this well. I would instead say we had lengthy conversations with other federal government agencies, with groups that are already working with NSF on similar or adjacent initiatives, with the VC and incubator community, to understand what works and what can be kind of ported over to this effort and what needs to be built in a different way because it doesn't exist. So, I mean, what we're trying to do is partially, you know, create a new sector in this space. Perhaps there's some people that are doing some of this work already or doing it in adjacent spaces. But you know, we think we're moving into a new area here, and we're excited about it. And we're hoping that the opportunity to work with this really exciting portfolio and potentially receive up to $9.5 million over a 3-year period will incentivize new entrants into this field who perhaps might not have worked in it in the past.
Great. Another question, are there specific services/perks you're looking for the awardees? So free software, cloud credits, et cetera, et cetera.
We don't have anything specifically in mind. You know, we leave that up to the submitting organization to put forward their vision. The one thing I'll say, and I hope this doesn't get me in trouble with contracts, is like, at this point in our universe, cloud credits and in-kind are like a dime a dozen. Like everybody offers those up. There isn't a single incubator, accelerator, affiliated program in the world that doesn't offer up some type of credits. So I would just say, think more creatively and beyond the bare minimum when you think about the offerings and the support and the things that you can bring to the table.
Awesome. Okay. So some of the examples you provided, including the role playing, suggest high efficiency in finding the right resources and connections to a large ecosystem. Sorry, it's kind of a long question, so let me get down to it. It would be great if you could clarify if you see a place for providers of systems and tools in helping this ecosystem work smoothly.
So that sounds like a technology question. I would say really intentionally read the offering that we've put forward and figure out if there's a place for you as a lead organization, or if there's a place for you as a subcontractor, or if there's perhaps a place for you to build on top of this once we have a builder platform in place and an organization in place leading this effort. So I can't advise, but we talked a lot about things this is not. I would intentionally look at that because I wouldn't want someone to come forward with a vision and spend a lot of time on an application if it doesn't meet the expectations of what we put forward in terms of what we're looking to build. So I can't answer that question directly without knowing more, but what I would say is just take some time to read the solicitation offering and read what we're looking for, and not just think about what you have created, but read actually what we are looking for there.
Thank you. Is there any data you can share on market size broken down by key contacts through ecosystem and the category? For example, private public businesses, universities, funding sources, and talent. So is there any data of the breakdown of that market size?
I don't think we've done any work on that. Perhaps other foundations have put out research reports on that, but NSF hasn't.
Thank you. So now we'll move on into some conflict of interest questions. If an organization is named as a partner on a Type 1 or Type 2 award, how should the organization address a potential COI if selected under the Builder platform?
We're asking you to tell us how you're going to address that. That should be a part of your proposal. One, if you've already received the award, that might be an answer. Two, if you're under consideration for a Type 2, you might have a different answer. So we want to understand how you're going to address current or future COIs, how you're going to think about firewalls, how you think you're going to do this work, and do you think you can do this work? Maybe take a hard, long look at it and answer that question in the way that I kind of discussed it before. So we have not said if you are X, you are ineligible, or if you are Y, you are eligible. But we are going to ask you to justify how you will address the situation, and then we will read that and evaluate it when we read the application. So I think there are ways for people to address this. I think there are ways for people to create firewalls. I think there are ways for people to give funds back. I think there's a number of different ways to address this. We're not going to weigh in on any of those specific paths. We're just asking you to put forward your COI plan.
Can a lead organization also be a sub on other applications besides the one they submit as a lead?
Ben, what's the language there? I forget exactly what we came down on. I have some thoughts, but I want to make sure I say what we actually wrote in. Ben, are you there?
I am, but I do not have it open. I would refer any interested parties to the solicitation, as I do think we cover it. It's addressed.
Yeah, I think we have language on it. I just want to make sure we get it right, but I would refer you to it because we do have language on it. We don't have limitations on people coming in on multiple applications as subcontractors, but I think we do have clearer language about what role you can play once you have submitted as a lead organization.
And that will also be answered in the FAQ.
Yes.
Can federal, state, or local be subawardees? Is it possible to have a DOE national lab on our team?
We don't have any limitations. We would just need to understand how they would address any potential COIs.
Awesome. Moving on into partnerships. Who are the entities in the mesh net of partners? For example, if the awardee needed help with an AI technology, is there a group of providers who are somehow vetted and registered with NSF?
I mean, I think the goal of this organization would be to build out those networks and take advantage of some networks that NSF already has. But largely, we're looking for you to bring your own relationships and networks to the table. So, you perhaps might build out a mentor network of AI experts that are going to work with those portfolio of mentor those teams, or you might work with other federal agencies that are making investments in that area and help them understand where there are different pathways. We are leaving it to the builder platforms to put forward their vision. We are trying not to be overly prescriptive, because when you become overly prescriptive, you get exactly what you ask for, as opposed to seeing the full creativity that might be possible in the ecosystem.
Awesome. With this question, I think this person may be a little confused between with the engines and the builder platform, but I just want you to provide some clarity. Will you have several engine platforms that work specifically with Black and Brown communities?
Yeah, so the way I would think of it is you have your engines. They're all across the country. NSF is making those awards. We're then selecting an organization or organizations that will lead this builder platform, and they are working with the entire portfolio. So one of the pieces, one of our core topic areas, is how do we embed DEIA into all of our engines? So the builder platform organization is going to be really intentional about thinking about how are we going to engage Black and Brown communities? How are we going to help these awardees support their Black and Brown communities and create pathways for people in a number of different ways. So it isn't saying we're going to kind of create a specific effort for this, and then there's going to be a separate engine around this. It's more, how do you work across the entire portfolio to support them on these key topic areas, whether that is, cultivating talent, building partnerships, thinking through sustainability, or embedding DEIA into all the activities of these engines on the ground, and also thinking about how you create pathways into all the builder platform offerings for communities that have historically been left behind or disenfranchised around these types of efforts.
Great. We had a few questions about connecting. How can organizations connect with each other? How are they going to connect with engine awardees? Those were some of the questions that came through.
Yeah, so once we choose the organization to lead the builder platform, we will facilitate all those connections to the awardees. You won't have to have those relationships to start. We'll facilitate that. And then, as I mentioned, we had an opt-in for people who signed up for this webinar to be able to get the contact information of others who also joined. So if you want to reach out to each other, feel free to do that. If you see people who are interesting, what I'll ask, and I'm going to be very clear about this, do not email blast the list. Like, do not say, here's my solution. Everyone, you should put me on your application. Like, we've had people do that in the past. We really want to avoid that. Be intentional with your outreach. Send personalized emails to people. Do not just blast everyone with your solution. This is not your marketing list. And then we're also thinking about other ways. At the next webinar, we're thinking about potentially having breakout rooms at the end that you all can just go into and talk to each other. We won't necessarily lead the effort, but we'll open and create that space for you virtually for you to have conversations with each other. If you have other ideas about how we can introduce you to each other, let us know. If it's within our rules, we're open to it. But at its core, we recognize this is going to take partnerships. It's going to take people working together, because this is a new space, and most people probably don't have expertise in every single thing that we're looking for, perhaps need support on different things in building this infrastructure. And we want to encourage that. But as I mentioned before, we don't want to create a loose federation of 70, 80, can't put a number on it, a very large number of organizations. We really want you to be kind of intentional in how you build out your your coalition and your builder platform team. Ignore the numbers that I said. Those numbers do not mean anything.
Can we partner with non-US experts? Some people work with experts in the OECD and EU that have relevant experience.
Email that question to us because we'll have to check on that. I know we have some rules about organizations that can receive NSF funds, so I'd want to check with our team internally.
Does the organization size of the nonprofit matter to prime this effort?
We don't have certain requirements in terms of organization size. We do have several evaluation questions about relevant past experience in the written proposal section. But if you can prove that your organization or the people involved in your effort have the relevant experience, we do not have size requirements. We want to make sure that you're capable of working with our full portfolio, which is potentially up to 60 plus awardees, and that you're able to absorb the funds that are going to come in and potentially additional funds that other entities put in on top of that. But we don't have a certain number of employees or revenue or anything like that outlined.
So how should one document partner expectations beyond a letter? Are partners expected to be in the budget or in subcontract budgets that are presented in the proposal? And does a collaborative proposal require a formal written agreement or partnership or a memorandum of understanding at time of submission?
So I think we're going to get into some of these details in greater detail during the technical webinar, but at a high level, I would say this should be written into your proposal, how you're going to work with the different partners. And there's also letters of collaboration. And if there are going to be flow of funds, those can be represented in the budget. But if we want to go into more detail, we should probably do so in the next webinar.
Can subcontractors be proposed as a letter of understanding at proposal and then signed agreements upon award?
I would need to refer back to the language in the offering about what is required. But we want to understand that you have the capabilities to start executing early on in the award period. So whatever is going to give us that confidence that you're going to be able to deliver on the vision early in the award period would probably meet that standard. But if you want more details, I would refer you back to the solicitation offering, and we can also address some of those questions in future FAQs if they're still ambiguous to folks.
Another one that could probably be addressed in the next webinar, but someone asked, how can subs feel confident that if an award is awarded that they will be used? What will NSF do to support and enforce this?
I don't think that's our responsibility. That is going to be a relationship between you and the lead organization. We are going to make an award based on the organizations that we think are around the table, but we're not going to enforce agreements between a private organization and its subcontractors. At least that's my understanding.
So is the NSF engine US only? Is the effort for US only, or can it have international involvement?
This is one that I would say to send us an email about it, because it's something we'll probably have to run internally. But what I will say is all of our awardees, type 1 and type 2, are going to be US based organizations and regions. So the regions that you're going to be supporting are in the US. We'll need to check on it if you're talking about a flow of funds to entities that are outside of the US. But I can say that the portfolio of awardees that you'll be working with will all be US based, US states and territories.
Thank you, Daniel. Can you share more about the expectations for direct or hands-on support for type 1 awardees by the Builder Platform relative to what they will receive from other NSF/partner support mentioned? So they're curious about the depth of scalable support described versus what's required for the 50 regions with the type 1 awardees.
Yeah, we kind of leave it up to you all to propose what that looks like. As I mentioned before, Curriculum is going to be provided by another entity to the type 1 awardees, but we do think there are a lot of support offerings that we would like to provide to the type 1 awardees. I mean, there are going to be a lot of things that they are lacking and they need support on. So, some of those things might be optional, and then some of these things are going to be scalable, perhaps that they can be offered to the type 1s and the type 2s. But we also envision a situation where there are some curated specific efforts that are just for the type 2s. It's a much smaller portfolio. They're at a different level of maturity. They have different needs. So I think one of our evaluation criteria is talk to us about what you're going to offer to the type 1s versus the type 2s, and what are you going to offer both of them. So we leave it to you, kind of put forward your vision. But at multiple times we talk about how we know that what is needed is different for different parts of this ecosystem and at different stages of development. And we hope that the applicants will also understand these differences.
Great. Will there be points given to potential applicants who have a history of working with communities of color in this space?
I would refer you to the evaluation criteria that we set forward.
Okay. How will it work if NSF selects more than one lead organization?
It's a good question, and it is something that we will sort out at the time of contract negotiations, if that is the direction we ultimately decide to go in. I think there's a number of different ways it could be structured. We have, multiple organizations that support other programs. So we would need to figure out what makes the most sense given our unique needs for this program. So I know that's an amorphous answer, but we've said we're going to have one or more organization, but we've also been very clear that the lead organization should have the capacity to work across the entire portfolio and with type 1s and type 2s and be kind of that backbone organization.
Someone asks, how can you check if you opted into the email list?
You would have filled it out when you signed up on Zoom. It was a checkbox. It's okay. If you missed it this time, you can come to the next webinar and opt in for that one.
Great. Now moving into proposal preparation. Is the 15-page proposal still double spaced?
Ben, what's the answer to that one? I can check.
Yeah, the proposal should be single spaced.
You don't have to use the full 15 pages if you don't want to, though. It's up to 15 pages. So it's up to you all in terms of how you use the space.
Are all of the application pieces that state no page limit still under the 15-page total proposal page limit?
No, they're separate.
Thank you. Will we need to know our subcontractors by the application deadline, or can we name them after the awarded funding?
I think if you have key gaps, you should identify how you are going to fill those key gaps. And then we need to have confidence that you can execute on that. So if you do have subcontractors that are lined up, as much as you can have the full coalition team brought together before the application, that is the ideal. But we also recognize that some of these relationships will emerge and change over the course of the award period. So we are allowing that level of flexibility.
Okay, do you recommend letters of support as part of the application packet?
I think we call them letters of collaboration. So I would refer to what we say in the solicitation offering. I don't think we say just send us a bunch of letters of support. I think it's only for people who are going to be subcontractors that you provide letters of collaboration. But if you do, you can use your 15-page narrative to talk about relationships that you're going to bring to the table. I mean, that's one of the things. What networks, what partnerships can you bring to the table?
Gotcha. What are some examples of key outcomes or performance metrics of a successful builder platform?
I'm going to just read you a paragraph that we have in it. In its end state, NSF expects the builder platform will create a set of resources and an accompanying engaged and expanding community. The builder platform will connect awardees in a curated way to talent, capital, networks, and resources that they need to provide during and beyond their award period. What is needed to achieve those goals will evolve over time as the type 1 and the type 2 awardees enter the cohort, mature, and new awardees join future cohorts. Together, the NSF Engines and Builder Platform will produce a new model that empowers awardees to thrive and drive long-term economic impact in emerging innovation ecosystems. So that's kind of our end state is, you have this strong organization, it's growing, there's things being built on top of it, there's new opportunities coming forward, but at its core, it's helping our awardees through each of these stages in their development, even as they exit the portfolio and new organizations join. I mean, this should really be the organization that helps shepherd them through their growth and helps them build and grow in the ways that they need to. So I'm not going to say success is X number of dollars or Y number of partnerships. We're going to ask you, there's a section where we talk to you about things that we want you to track throughout this, but I think it would be presumptuous to try to put numbers on those things right now.
Agree. I'm going to jump back up to general, and Jemin, if there's a question that you've added that you think is important to ask, please go ahead and ask it. Real quick question, is this an OA or an OTA?
It's an OTA, correct, Ben? I just want to double check. Yes, OTA. I think one of the slides accidentally said OA because it was an older slide, but it is an OTA. And that is other transaction arrangement for those of you who don't know.
Into some more funding questions. Does NSF expect a proponent to match funds? If a proponent has the capacity of adding a significant amount of funds to the Builder platform, would that improve award chances?
We don't have a requirement that you need to bring outside funds to the platform effort at the time of an application. We do have language around sustainability and helping our awardees connect to sources of capital, but we do not have a requirement that you need to bring additional resources to the effort on day one.
We had a couple questions on if you're awarding more than one awardee for the Builder platform, how will funding be split?
We don't have an answer to that until we've actually seen the application. What we said is for each organization, it is up to $9.5 million, and we would need to evaluate the portfolio and see what makes the most sense once applications come in. So I think it would be premature to try to speculate about if we would be splitting that award size or taking other steps.
I guess our one last question, and Jemin, if I missed one, please add one. How important is the revenue model to the application?
It's a part of the application, and we ask about your budget as a part of it. So I would say it's an important aspect, as are all the other things that we're asking you to submit.
Okay. Thank you all for your questions. As I said, they have all been recorded. If we hadn't addressed them, we will hopefully address them in the FAQ. But yeah, I'll turn it back over to Dan to close us out.
Yeah, thank you so much to everyone who's here. I know we had hundreds of people on the call, which is really exciting. I don't think that should be viewed as you're going up against hundreds of people in an application process, but hopefully it's that, a lot of you are going to come together and figure out the best way to build applications, or some of you are going to determine that you're going to build on top of what ultimately is created as our Builder platform. But irrespective, as I said at the top, this is an exciting new initiative. This represents a new approach that NSF Engines and TIP are taking on, and we're going to continue to be rolling out new creative ways to build and to co-create, and we hope that you'll be involved in this process, and we look forward to having you at future webinars, at office hours, and we look forward to reading your applications come June. So thank you so much, and look forward to having you involved, and can't wait to introduce you to future members of the team in the coming weeks. Have a great afternoon.